Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about everything that you need to know to get started with Material UI as a beginner. We're going to start off talking about how to install the library, and then we're going to move into how to use specific components, rendering them in your app, and then we're going to move on to styling or customizing those components using a custom theme, and all the way down into adding in custom templates that you could use to start off a real React project with this library. I hope you enjoy this, and let's get started. So here we are on materialui.com. You could see this is a UI library for React. They give you React components for faster and easier web development, as they say. My thoughts on this library are this is the best UI library for React that exists. So if you try to look at other React UI libraries and you've kind of were wondering which one you should use, I recommend this one. I don't really even have a second recommendation. I think that this one just supersedes all of them just because of how good the UI components look, but also the documentation, the amount of components, how long this is being developed for, all that kind of stuff just ties into why I think this is just an awesome UI library that you could use for your business or professional projects, anything that involves a real React project. I think this is safe to put into your project. The reasons behind that I'll go into. First, let's just kind of scroll down here on the home page. You can see we have, just some installation instructions here. And then going down, there's not really much else to talk about on the home page. So if we go over here to the top left, this is going to be your menu where you're going to be looking through the documentation. So if we go here to get started, let's go to the installation. So here we have just how to install Material UI into your app. So if you're familiar with NPM or Yarn, this is the main package you're going to add right here. So you're going to add the @material-ui/core package. And you need this React dependency here. So if you're on an older React version, you might want to either upgrade React or choose a different version of Material UI. Roboto font, you're also going to want to add this Roboto font style sheet into your app. So if you have, create React app project that you've launched, you're going to add this link style sheet into your HTML file. Font icons, so you are going to also want to add in the style sheet for the font icons, and you're also going to need to add in the package for Material UI icons as well. So you're going to add that in with this package here, Material UI/icons. And we'll show that shortly. We're also going to add this in on a code sandbox to show you guys how to install Material UI. I guess let's just go ahead and do that now. That way we can have that working example while we're talking about the remaining components. So if we go here, we have a fresh code sandbox here. So we're just going to do create sandbox. And we're going to do create sandbox, and we're going to go to React by code sandbox team. So we're going to add that. I also wanted to mention that on our website, at react.school/material UI, we have most of the things we're talking about in this video here. So if you just want to read through instead of listening to me talk about it, you can go here to react.school/material UI. And then we have, we're kind of just starting this. So we have a button here. So we have, for example, all the button examples here that we have. So you can just kind of read through this if you want to see, jump right to the code examples that we're going to talk about. So anyway, but let's start from scratch. So let's go back here to this installation page. So I'm on a fresh React code sandbox here. And as you could see, we just have the regular React setup here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to add dependency, and we're going to search for Material UI, and we're going to add Material UI/core. So this is pretty much all you need. You also do want to add that style sheet for Roboto font, but because we're in Chrome, we already have that installed. So Chrome is already going to load that Roboto font for you. That's like the main Material UI font. But if you're in another browser, you won't have that. Like Safari doesn't have that font. So you do want to make sure that in your index.html, you add that style sheet for that font. So anyway, going back here, this is that font. So for example, you're going to want to just paste that in here like this. Okay. So going back into the app, so now we've added the Material UI core package, we've added the Roboto font. Let's go ahead and start adding a component. So that's where we go to the usage. So this is the main page to show how to use a Material UI component. So you're going to import the component that you want from the package from the folder that you want. This is literally all you need. It says right here. So you're going to import, let's say we want to import that button, and then we're just going to, so let's import that button into our app like this. Then if we go down here, we can just copy and paste that in. So let's just get rid of this here and let's just paste that in. Okay, so now you can see we have a Material UI button. We have that Roboto font working there. And yeah, so this is it. So as you can see, there's props that are being passed in, and we'll talk about that shortly. So that's just how to use a Material UI component. There's some other things about here about this meta tag and all that stuff. So you could read that, but let's just skip ahead down here. So now next thing I want to talk about, this is the getting started section over here, by the way. We're going to go back to this later in this video, but first I do want to talk about the most important section, which is components. This is where you can browse all of Material UI's components. And yeah, this is just all the components that you want to render in your app are here. So you could just go find the one that you want to look at. Let's look at button. And as you can see, these are all the different types of buttons that you can render in your app. So this page, how this page works, I'm just going to talk about this section versus the API section. The components section is more or less just high level, like these are the examples that they use. So this is really what makes the Material UI documentation so good, is that they have these examples for each component, and these examples really work, and you can copy the full source code. So that's really cool. So you could see, just scroll down here, we'll just see they organize these however they want. There's no like formal way that they organize these props, but basically each prop has a different type of, so for example, for button, you have a variant prop, and that variant prop by default is going to be this one down here, text button. So this is what the default button looks like right here. And as you can see, they have a variant which changes the button variant to be contained. Now there's also another variant down here for outlined. So this is the outlined variant, which looks like this. And yeah, they also experiment with different colors throughout this. So it's not like it's organized by prop. It's just they have different examples that you could use, which is actually good because you don't want like every single prop. That's what kind of what we did here for this example. Whenever this loads, if we open this sandbox, we'll just kind of show you the example that we made, which just has different props, kind of organized more or less flat list of different props that you could render. As you could see, the different props change different properties of those components. So pretty straightforward. The disabled prop is going to disable that button. The disable elevation is going to get rid of the box shadow. So if we go here to the end icon, you could see that is a component here. So that's just a component that is going to display at the end of the button. You're going to want to use an icon component for that. So we'll talk about icons in a second. So if we go here now back to our code sandbox, we're a little bit too far into this now. Let's go back to our code sandbox. Now let's talk about how we're going to add in icons. So if you scroll all the way down here on the button page, you'll see the API. So if you go to the API and you open that up, you'll see this is the second section here. Every component has an API associated with it. And what this does is this just kind of straight up tells you all the props that this button takes, and then all of the CSS rules. And we'll get into the CSS rules shortly. But all of those props that we had there are listed here. So the color, you can't list, you can't actually like type in a hex code for the color. This is just the theme colors. So like your primary theme and your secondary theme. And this is a convention that they adopt throughout the different components. Basically, like if you have a component that's constantly specifying like a hex code for that color, and then you want to change all of the hex codes for that app, it's going to be really tedious, right? But with Material UI, you have primary and secondary colors that are applied throughout the whole app. And one thing, so I'll show that really quick. So if we go here to edit website colors, you could see here we actually have the primary and secondary colors. So we can actually go ahead and change those colors, and those get applied throughout the whole website. So we could set the docs colors. So now we have this like green and orange scheme. And if we go back to the button, you can see now that our buttons are now adopting that theme here. So that's really cool. So all right, next, I do want to talk about icons because we didn't add in that icon button or that icon package yet. So if we go here to this example and we show the source, let's go ahead and add this example. So this is a bigger example, but we're just going to copy this whole thing. You saw that what I did here was I clicked on this, hide the source and show the source, right? So this is really cool because this gives you that exact example here, just that you could basically paste into your app. And it has all of the imports as well. So that's really awesome, right? So we're just going to copy all of this. And what we're going to do to show you how you would, directly like copy and paste this in your app if you really wanted to, move quickly, what you could do is let's just call this button icon example. And in this, what we're going to do is we're going to paste all that stuff we had in. And that's it. We don't have to do anything else. Now, we didn't add in this icon package yet. So this is going to throw an error when we try and import this. But I want to show you that just in case you get that error yourself. So we're going to say button icon example. We're going to import that from our button icon example, right? And could not define that dependency. So that shows you that you do need to add that dependency, right? So we're going to add in app material UI /icons. Okay, so we add that. It's going to load that dependency. Now we no longer get that error. So let's just wrap this in a fragment just so we could show a bunch of different examples. We're going to add in that button icon example. Okay, now what we're going to do here is we're actually going to get rid of this other button. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, so we have this example. Now what's going on here with this? Okay, so what's happening here is we didn't actually add in that style sheet, right? So if we go here, I'm going to go back to installation and we're going to add in that icon style sheet here. So we copy that. We go back to our public index.html and we're just going to paste in that style sheet. You only need to do this if you want to make it work for that second example, which uses font icons. So if you're just importing the regular Material UI icons, you don't need to do this. Awesome. Okay, so now we've kind of officially finished the installation. That was just showing you how to add in those components or how essential it is when you're loading those icons to add in that style sheet and to import the package. All right, so now we're going to be talking about how to style these components. So you might be thinking, well, they have their own look for these components. I want to, style these for my own app or my own business. How do I do that? How do I change the colors? We're going to talk about all of that stuff now. So if you go down here to styles, you could see there's the basics, advanced, and API. There's also another section down here all about theming your app and then how to customize each component. So we're going to just breeze through these real quick. First, the basics. This is their main styles library. Now you could actually, if you don't even use Material UI, you can add this into your app if you want to use their styling solution. I use styled components. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I love styled components. They have a similar API, except instead of writing CSS inside your JavaScript, you're writing JSS. So you're writing, JavaScript basically to define those CSS rules. So if you go down here, let's just go right to it, the hook API. So this is the main API to style your app. So if you go here, they have the make styles handler. So this is you're going to import this from the styles library. As you can see here in our button example, we do that as well, all right here. So if we go back up, now what this is going to do is this is going to create that hook. So if we go down here, this is the actual usage of that. It's going to generate the CSS object classes. So this is an object with CSS classes that Material UI is going to generate for us. So class name, as you know, it's a regular React prop on every element. This is going to apply to the root element. So this, they name this root, but you can name it whatever you want. You should name it what it is though. So it's root, right? And this is being applied to the root. So this is a class that's being generated. It's being applied to the root element, right? So now you can see here, this is the regular CSS properties. If you've used React inline styles, it's the same thing. So you have, instead of the box dash shadow, you have camel case. So you're just going to use the CSS properties as normal, but they're going to be in camel case, okay? And this is going to be an object. So each style rule that you want to reference, or each class that you want to reference, if you have another element down here you want to reference, you could use, a different CSS class name for that one. But what this is doing, it's just putting it on the base element. So if you go and look at this element, so you can see the main HTML for this element. So this is the root class. So this is where your root styles are going to be applied. That root right here, that's the style rule for that root element. Now, if you go down here, you could see the HTML inside of the span. So this is the text. This is the label. So this is you could see dash label. That's the rule, the CSS rule that's being applied there. So this example is not styling this exact text here. It's just putting those styles on the root element. So you can see here, those are the styles that are being applied, right? Just raw CSS right on the root element. So if you want to style some random component in here, first thing to do is just check, can I actually put those styles on the root element? Play around with it. If I want to, put a blue background on this, can I do that? Can I add CSS on the root element that's going to actually work? And try that out. And if you need to style something in the middle, if you want to make this font bigger, for example, then you're going to see, well, what's that rule? What is that CSS rule here? And then target that rule. And we'll target that rule shortly. If we go down here, we could look at an example of that. So the rest of this specific page doesn't show you how to do that. It just shows you different ways of using the styling API. So there's also a styled components like API, but this isn't really like styled components because you're not typing CSS in here. Until they make something like that, I just suggest using the regular hook API because all their examples are using the hook API. So if you copy in any of their other examples, you're going to get the hook API. So I wouldn't advise using this right now until they upgrade this. So then going down here, this is another way to do it. So if you if you want to like encapsulate those style props inside of the component, and so that component's always going to render with those props, with those styles through that, instead of having to, this is not really tied to this component. This is just being referenced here, but this would tie those props, the styles, to the element itself so that you could just render this anywhere and you don't have to worry about, importing this and rendering it with the hook API. Once again, this is a special case that we're not really going to talk about. And yeah, so you could adapt based on the props. So you could put in your own props to that hook, that style hook, and then you could adapt inside of the rules. So if you want to pass in a custom background color for your style rule, you could do that like this. So, and once again, this is just a bunch of different use cases for that. So that's the basics. The advanced guide here, this is for theming. So themes are just the global theme. If you go to up here and you go to default theme, you could see this is their default theme on Material UI. So you go here, you can see their palette, their default palette, their primary and secondary colors. We're gonna just demo that too. If we go here to shadows, you can see they have all these shadows in here. They have typography, the font size, the font body. If you want to change the font family globally, you could do that by changing the theme here. So these are all the different themes. You have breakpoints, so where your app is responsive. You have, the spacing, so different spacing, and you have transitions, you have easing, so you have animation, you have all kinds of things. So, okay, so if you go over here to customization, and then you go to components, this is really where you can actually customize the style of those components with overriding those rules that we just talked about. So if you go down here, you could see this section right here is going to explain how to exactly do that. So what we have here, normally, as we talked about, the class name is going to be on that root element, but with the class's object property, you're going to be able to style any one of those rules, right? So we talked about the button. We showed you how to check out which rules those are. And you can also see those in the API. If you go down to the API, you can see those style rules listed out in the API, right? Go down here, you could see every rule that you could target. If you go over here to this customizing components page that we were just on, this classes here. So we've expanded out this example above here, and you could see that they just use that same make styles hook and they target each one of those rules. Now, these are just the names of those objects, or the names of the keys of the classes. These aren't the actual rules. Here is the rule. So this is where Material UI says, okay, is there a rule for this key? Use this class. Okay, so you can name this whatever you want. So you have multiple components in here. You may want to like call this like button label or button root or something. But here you could see they override those rules just like that. And so here you could see they capitalize the letters. They use, or normally it's uppercase. This one they're capitalizing the first letter, so that's where they style the label, and then they do the same thing with the button root. So this is overriding the root of the button, and then this is targeting a specific rule. Root is also a rule. So okay, so this is a kind of a taste for how to style these components. You could also target different situations, so different local rules, and if you have a disabled button, you may want to say, hey, this is a specific rule for when the button is disabled. If we go back to the API, see how do they don't, let's see, do they say disabled here? So you could see this is this is a prop, right? But if we go down here, is there a CSS rule? So there's also CSS rule for disabled. So if disabled is true, this rule will be there, and then whatever CSS you have for that rule will be applied there. So that's how you style a disabled button. So I think this is the most important part about the component styling. You could keep reading about how to make a custom theme in the theme provider. So if we go down here, you could see so this example here, what you have is you're overriding those rules inside of the theme, right? So you have that palette and you have a secondary color, and what you're doing here is they're targeting a specific color. So they are using that theme. They're doing create MUI theme. So they're creating their own theme, and then they're using it by wrapping that component in a theme provider. And we do that in our example over here. As you can see here, what we're doing is we're creating a theme here. So we're creating a custom theme with these colors. Now the colors you can import from Material UI/core/colors. We're importing those colors here. And then we're creating our own theme, referencing the palette properties. So palette, if you go back to the default theme, right, you could see this is I clicked expand all here, and you could see the palette. You could see these are the different palette keys. So we have primary, secondary, error, warning, info, et cetera, all the way down to gray. So you could override any one of these by creating that custom theme. So creating that custom theme, but then how do we use it? We just wrap it in a theme provider, which we import from the styles library. So we wrap that with the theme provider, pass in our default theme up top, but then inside we have to, we can use a different theme. So this is just showing nested theme providers. So everything inside here is using this theme with our green and purple colors. Okay, so you might be saying, all right, well, buttons are all well and good, but how do I get something more complicated? How do I start building a real app, right? Is there a template that I could use? Is there some kind of thing that's going to show me how to build out, an app drawer, an app bar? Where do I go to do that? So luckily, there's a ton of examples that you could drop right into your app that's going to give you a lot of that real app functionality. So this is sort of the drawers. So we're going to look at the drawer component here. So this is really going to give you that menu. And if you go here, you could see this responsive drawer example. This is a really awesome example. So if we edit this in the code sandbox, I'm just going to show you what you get out of the box with this example, because I think it's a great starting point if you want to build out a menu for your app. So as you can see here on mobile, it's going to be that menu here, just like on their website. It's going to give you that pop-out drawer. And then when this expands past a certain point, it's going to give you that sidebar here that's not going to be that menu. Just like, let's see, this example here, right? So on their documentation, if you get that exact kind of behavior here on their documentation page, you can implement that in your app pretty easily. So if you go ahead and you look at this, this is going to be somewhat complicated example here. So we can go ahead and just talk about this. Just like the other examples, you can literally just copy this and paste it in your app. But for real circumstances, you're going to want to heavily modify this to add in router, React router, and all that kind of customization. But you can see here, the main thing that you should know is the responsiveness is really important. So if we go up to the style rules here, you could see they access the breakpoints. So when up, this is the key function. So it's a function of this small. So small is going to be that breakpoint. And when it's greater than the small breakpoint, so small is going to be like a phone, we're going to be setting the width of the page to be the drawer width. So the drawer width is this ends up being used as the width of the drawer, right? So what is going to happen is it's complicated. So what's going to happen is this is only going to be applied when we're on desktop. So that's all you need to know. And then this one, the app bar, is only going to be applied as well on desktop. So we're looking at the desktop styles of this right now. So when it's mobile, basically when it's mobile, these are just deleted, right? So these aren't existing in mobile. So when it's in mobile, you could see that this, as you could see, it has basically no width when it's in mobile. So so you can see here, so that's what happens when we're on mobile. When we get rid of this, the app bar stretches throughout the whole width. So the width of the app bar is going to be calculated based on the drawer width in desktop. So that's just an example of this. Okay, so there we go. The menu button as well. On desktop, we're not going to have that menu button. So if we get rid of that, the menu button's there. On desktop, we are going to hide that menu button. And what does that menu button do? The menu button is going to show and hide this other drawer. So basically, we have a whole other drawer that's being rendered there. So what's happening here is, if we go down here, you could see we have two drawers. So we have this one drawer that's only available, or it's hidden, and this is a hidden component. That means, hide this under a certain situation, which is right here, this prop. So when this is on desktop, right, and then this is the mobile keyword here for hiding this. So this is going to be hidden on desktop. So this is the mobile one. On mobile, it's going to be a temporary drawer. And then for this one, this is going to be a permanent drawer. Desktop, this drawer is going to be permanent. And then on this mobile, it's going to be temporary. Now, if we go here and we look at those drawers, we could see, again, if we're looking at just look for the temporary. So a temporary drawer is shown for small screens, while a permanent drawer is shown for wider screens. And it doesn't give you really a clear definition of what that is. So we're just going to stop it there. This is just an example of, how you would put that into your app. Basically just kind of copy that example and just use the conventions that they're doing in these examples. Now, for more advanced examples, let's go to getting started and go to templates. This page is really awesome just to have, if you want to see, let's say a landing page, you can go here and you can see this is a whole page that's built with Material UI. I'm going to go and reset that theme. Okay, so if you go back here, reset docs colors. Now if I go back here and I refresh this, so you can see now we have this theme. So if you go back to templates, you could see here, we could see the source code for this theme. And then you click on this, and then now we could just copy all of this code into our app. So let's say we want a new page, or let's just say let's just paste over this button icon example. So if we paste over this, we save it, see what happens here. So all we did was we pasted that new example here right over the button example, which is being imported. And this was being an exported, default component, so we didn't have to rename anything. And just like that, we have that whole example here. So we have that whole template here that we could use. So we could use this as a landing page. We could do, build something with this just like out of the box. So you could take a look at more of these examples and get going with a more complete boilerplate. Okay, so that's how you would integrate a template into your app from this template section here to get more of a complete boilerplate. I'm just going to briefly, before I end this video, I just want to show you some more of these components here. You can see we have sliders. You can go down to, text inputs. So if we go down here to text field, this is going to be, you're going to be using a lot of these in your app. You could see they're ADA compliant, which means you could tab through these with the tab button. And you can see here we have forms, we have disabled properties, we have validations, so errors you could use. And we have so many other components. We have selects. So this is using selects. So we could choose these It's like a drop down. And they show you how to integrate all of these. So very cool. And there's a whole bunch of other things. There's checkboxes here. Stepper is a really cool component as well. You can kind of create like this step-by-step workflow just right out of the box. Again, just click on view source to see how they integrate this example. It's all here. Tabs, so you could click on different tabs here. The app bar, just this bar up top, they have that. All of those different types of examples you can integrate. Feedback, so they have loading indicators. Avatar, so if you want to render a person, you could do that pretty easily. You could fall back to different letters. So pretty easily, you just put it like a letter in here and it shows the letter inside there. Pretty good for when somebody doesn't have an image. More subtle components like a divider. So this like line right here is a divider. Pretty cool. And then icons. So if you search for icons here, you could click on material icons right here, and you could see that you could search the full list of icons. So how we imported those icons, you can import any one of these icons. So you just kind of add that name, and then you could add that in there. Okay, well, that's it for this video. I hope this was a start for you to get started with this awesome library. There's so much more we could discuss with this, which we will be making a lot more videos and courses on this. So subscribe to our channel if you want to see more, and thanks.